Right. So I did that a couple of weeks ago, and that has gone viral. There are many of you who have called on us and asked us to expand this law for your understanding. Thankfully, my production team have heard your calls, and we have the best team to assist us. And in the course of this year, as we have done over some period, as you recognize, at least in a month, we will try and take one particular issue at a time that affects all of us and bring the experts to deal with that particular issue, just like we are going to do this morning. I'm very excited to have here in the studio Kwame Jan. He's senior lecturer, University of Ghana School of Law, Legon. Thank you so very much for making the time to join us.
Thank you, Samson.
Now, for those who know, you can't have it any other way to have Kwame Jan to discuss these matters that we are talking about. Now, look just by me here. These books, they were authored by him, and as I understand, there is a revised edition that is going on. That is Customary Land Interests by Kwame Jan. Each is over 1,000 pages. Over 1,000 pages. I have my copies, and I just like it. So here, just take a look. I just wanted to take a look. The other one is Customary Land Management by Kwame Jan. Each is over 1,000 pages. So now you understand. You can't get it any better than this. Now, also here in the studio is Kofi Usupoku, who is former director, Public and Vested Land Management Division of the Lands Commission. Thank you so very much for making the time to join us.
Thank you, Samson.
We will, in the course of the discussion, also be joined by Mrs. Veronica Frimpong, former legal officer, Lands Commission, and head of legal SIC Life Savings and Loans. You will get direct answers to your questions. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Start sending some of the questions now, and then we'll open the phone lines for you to join us.
What's it? What's Fire him! Fire him! Shot him!
Everybody knows these criminals are called langas. They are doing it with the support of the Police Divisional Commander, ACPJ. In this area, we call him the Langas Commander.
Because we have documents to show that Chief sold the land to us.
From generations before this age, men and women have fought battles over land. Nations, communities, and people have fought bloody battles of conquest to rule over territories. Today in Ghana, land ownership and issues of litigation remain one of the critical causes of violence in our communities, towns, and villages. To own and use a piece of land, particularly in the national capital of Accra, might cost you more than just money. It might cost you your very life. Join me in the following documentary as I attempt to surgically interrogate the country's land use and management system. Ghana is about the size of the United Kingdom and occupies a total area of about 239,460 square kilometers, with an estimated population of about 28,409,576 as of January 1st, 2017, estimated to increase by 679,273 people and reach 29,088,849 in the beginning of 2018. Fact is, human population continue to increase every day on the surface of the earth. However, not an inch of land space has been added since creation. Ghana's land management.
Accra, you are the owner of the land, but somebody who can come later on, he say it belongs to him, the land belongs to him, with the same document. Somebody is holding document, somebody too is holding document. So that side, you have to involve land guards. So the hard one will take the land.
Wow. Even if you are not the legitimate owner of the land, once you can hire land guards like yourself, you can confiscate the land.
Because you are holding documents, I'm also holding documents. So if it were you, what you would do? Because when you take the matter to police station or to court, it will take some time, and you want to develop the land very urgently because there is a problem on the land. So you have to bring in land guards to protect the land. As we are working day and night, we have been here, we sleep here, we do everything here.
How helpful have these informants been to your business? I must say, to your outlawed business.
Why do you say outlaw? Why?
It's outlawed, isn't it?
When there is no job in the system, how do? You find your own job to survive. So I don't think it's outlaw. The government and the police people are misunderstanding. The people who understand the job, if they come on their side, they don't disturb us.
But we have some of your colleagues who go about hitting people, slashing people with cutlasses, hitting people with cudgels, shooting and killing. That makes your job unacceptable, to put it bluntly. Ion?
This is an interesting question. You know, in everything, there is bad, there is good.
Okay.
Even within your sons or daughters, there is bad girl, there is good girl. So anything you cannot find him 100%. We cannot say we are perfect, but in anything there is good and bad. That is what I can say.
The police have been in a constant battle with the land guards, making some big catches in the process.
You're welcome back. So that was Lateef Idris in his documentary Land War, and I'm sure you may be familiar with this terrain. There are many people who have sort of issues like bought lands, but they can't step their foot on those lands. Why is that so? Elsewhere, all lands are registered digitally, and people are able to do land transaction like they are buying, mobile credits. Lands are serviced and they just move on, properly demarcated, and you move on and you start your process. Why can't we have that done in Ghana? Particularly after the World Bank has spent millions in trying to help Ghana put its land administration together. Right. As we always do, when we are dealing with one subject matter on a special edition, we get our guests to comment one or two on the latest issues in town. We'll reserve that to when we are done with this discussion. So let me begin with Kwame Jan. First, when you listen to what you have seen, is it your reality in your experience in this field?
Good morning, Samson.
Right.
And a very good morning to your cherished listeners. What we just watched from this documentary is the reality of our times. In fact, it could get worse than this. And I've had opportunity, I would say the privilege maybe, of being around this sector for many years. And unfortunately, it hasn't gotten better than it was 10 years ago. The World Bank put in a lot of money to help Ghana to fix the land administration system. It is true. But land reforms are long-term national objectives. if you want to reap the dividends of a proper land reform agenda, you should be looking towards not less than 2 decades before you can really feel that something has changed on the ground. But you are not looking at anything below 15 years.
So in that case, when you take our project, Lap 1 and Lap 2, haven't you done 2 decades?
Yes, we've done Lap 1, Lap 2, and we started Lap around 2003. So we've not done 2 decades. But like I said, the dividends of the reforms would not be visible to all and sundry immediately.
Okay.
Now, let me tell you some of what has happened out of the reforms. Out of the reforms, we got a new legal regime for the institutional framework for the land sector. So in the year 2008, a new legislation, the Lands Commission Act, was enacted, passed, and assented to by the President. What the Lands Commission Act did was to bring together the previously separate and disparate institutions that manage land. So in the past, we had the Lands Commission, the Land Registry, the Land Valuation Board, the Office of Administrator of Stool Lands,
Deeds,
the Deeds Registry, the Survey Department, the Land Title Registry. All these agencies had their own legal setups. They had their own heads in terms of leadership. They had their own records. Now, with Act 767 of 2008, these agencies were brought together except the Administrator of Stool Lands and the Department of Town and Country Planning. The other 6 agencies were brought together under one umbrella of a Lands Commission. And the previously existing agencies were made functional divisions of a new Lands Commission. So, at least from 2008, one of the outcomes of Lap 1 was the creation of a new institutional structure. The objective is to also create a common depository of records. So now, because there is a one Lands Commission, you can have one set of records for the Lands Commission, which comprises of the Public and Vested Lands Management Division, the Land Registration Division, which is a combination of the Land Registry and the Land Title Registry. And then there is the SMD, which is the Survey and Mapping Division, which has taken over from the existing Survey Department. And then there is the Valuation Division, which has taken over from the old Land Valuation. So 6 institutions have become one.
One-stop shop.
One-stop shop. It gives land service delivery shortened time for realization. It also stops the process of hopping from one institution to the other, chasing after your documents. So at least that part of the reform agenda is visible. And we have seen it in less than the 20 years.
Okay. So I will return to you shortly to find out what this new regime, why this new regime has become necessary. If we had sought to put in place such an effective mechanism, and those of you listening and watching, you will tell us your reality that when we did this one-stop shop in 2008 up to today, have you reaped the dividends, the benefits? Do you still go to the Lands Commission to register your land, and it takes you forever, and it takes you having to see somebody and tip somebody, knowing somebody, or without that nothing goes on? Is it true or not that it depends on who can afford your property will be registered or will not be registered? Right. So thankfully also, remember, you can send in your messages now. We will take your messages now as part of what will assist to get you direct answers to some of your issues, but it is later on that we'll open the phone lines. So, Kofi Osupoku is former Director, Public and Vested Land Management Division of the Lands Commission. So, he should give us more practical, perspective of what he has just seen.
Thank you, Samson, and good morning to your cherished viewers and listeners. I agree with Kwame Jan that the situation is really bad. We've seen it all over the country, especially in the greater Accra region. You have total indiscipline in the land sector. People get away with a lot of lawlessness, and it has continued for a very long time. Unfortunately, these reforms have become necessary, especially this latest Land Act that tries to address some of the issues we've mentioned. But with respect to the institutional reforms begun by LAP 1, with the consolidation of the land sector agencies, I must admit it has been very helpful, but the practical aspect of the issue is that you are bringing in 4 or 5 hitherto separate institutions with their own separate cultures, bringing them together to come to work together for the first time. So initially we had huge teething problems. The records are kept in a different manner, and they didn't start immediately with computerization. It's now that the commission is going ahead with computerization. Because of that, we had initial hiccups, and we couldn't function and deliver as people expected. But the commission is going ahead and is making a lot of strides as it tries to computerize, and they try to work together more smoothly than in the past.
I'm excited that I can go there to initiate a process, and by the time I leave the premises to my office or somewhere, I have received a text message that informs me that this is that and this is going to be processed, you wait for this and that. But a lot more problems exist.
Yes, it goes to the records, the data.
Okay.
How we have been keeping our data. We try to computerize under LAP 2, but unfortunately, the computerization aspect came too late, and we couldn't complete it before the lab came to an end. So in-house, the commission itself is computerizing its records. So with computerization of the records, it will make our processes much faster, because if you don't computerize your records, and with 4 divisions, each inputting into the system, if you are not careful, you are going to create multiple records for different kinds of people, which we are trying to avoid. So we are making a lot of progress in that direction, trying to put our house in order. And I think those who have been dealing with us see some progress.
Okay. So before we move to now answer the question, then why the new regime? The two of you and all of us have been using LAP. What has LAP been? What is it? And what has been the purpose for it?
The Land Administration Project. Land Administration Project came in to reform the land sector. There were a lot of challenges, and it came as a result of the implementation of the policy actions of the land policy, which was passed in 1999. And implementing the land policy, the policy identified a lot of problems with the land sector, indiscipline in the land sector, multiple allocations of land, encroachments, and a lot of host of other problems. And it required some financing to put these reforms into place. So it was segmented into so many areas: institutional reforms, legal reforms, policy reforms, and all these things needed funding. That's why the Land Administration Project came into being, and it was funded by the World Bank, and it had several components. I think we started with a 5-year, was it a 5-year?
First 5.
First 5 years. it was done under Lab 1 and then we continued under Lab 2. But in running these projects, they were huge. In fact, I understand the World Bank, it was thought to be one of the biggest land sector reform projects all over the world. So, and it was the first of its kind. So we had really big challenges when we started with the program. So some of the outcomes we couldn't really achieve. But Lab 2, but as Kwame said, we managed to get the institutional reform through with the passage of the Lands Commission Act. And then under Lab 2, we also started a lot of institutional reforms. Then out of it, we have the Lands Commission Act. We also have the Town and Country Planning, Land Use and Spatial Planning Act, which has been passed in 2016. And the Administration of Stolen Lands Act also passed in 2018. So some work have already been done. And
so what was the chief aim beyond the legal regime reform, which you have spoken about so nicely? Do we have the entire country mapped? Does the countries, the authorities, are they able to sit at one place and know that this is what we have as a lands in this country and these are the owners of each land and so on and so forth? Do we have that, as it were, digitized? What was the purpose really?
You see, Samson, adding to what my colleague has said, one of the main purposes was to change the business processes of the land sector agencies. And one of the problems that we identified in implementing the land reforms was the absence of clear demarcations of the boundaries of large landowners.
Okay.
So let's take Accra. There are big blocks of groups that constitute the large landowners in Accra. So you have Nungwa, you have La, you have Teshi, you have Jamestown, you have Sempe, you have Asren, you have Bese, Kolewe, you have all of these groups that are landowners. There are stool and entities that own land adjoining the coast. So Nungwa, Teshi, La, Osu, Jamestown, they all are coastal groups, but they have land in the hinterlands. So the boundaries of these large owners presented some very unique problems. If you move out of Accra, the coast, you go to Pantan, Damfa, that area, it's Teshi land. Teshi land will be sharing a boundary with La land. There is a place called Amahia on the way to Dodua. That's La. Oyarifa is La. Adenta. And so one of the challenges we encountered was, how do you determine these people, their boundaries, these groups? Historically, they knew where the boundaries were. But because land had become a serious economic issue, these groups started not telling us the truth about their boundaries. We needed to get all of them. We implemented a program under the LAP called Systematic Boundary Demarcation, where we had funds available to go and demarcate the boundaries of the large owners across the country. But how do you get the La people and the Osu people and the Teshi people all on the ground so that you can identify and demarcate and pillar their boundaries? You call the meetings, nobody shows up. When they show up, there are fights, fist fights. I remember a meeting at the Institute of Local Government Studies in Medina. Fights, blows between the traditional landowners. So that part of the project, we couldn't make as much progress as we thought. If we had made significant projects in that area, it could have taken out some of the multiple sales, which are the results of indeterminate boundaries of these large landowners. There are some deliberate sales that are fraud, but there are instances where there are conflicting transactions because of the indeterminate nature of the boundaries. So we sought to, like I said, change the way these agencies do business. So for example, if you go to the land title registry, there were about 29 steps you have to take at the land title registry to register your land. Now, under the new system, those steps have been shortened because there were serious reviews of the business processes, and we found out that there were certain processes that have been put in the stream which we could ignore, we could take out and still achieve our objectives. You see, so something it's not. And my colleague talked about the Land Use and Planning and Special Planning Act. Previously, you had the Town and Country Planning Department, and the Town and Country Planning Department at the decentralized level was reporting to Ministry of Local Government. At the national level, they were reporting to the Ministry of Environment, Science and Innovation also. Now, part of the LAP, and most people may not know, but one of the major outcomes of the LAP was the passage of the Land Use and Special Planning Act, which now has created a new authority to be responsible for spatial planning.
Okay. And
this new legislation, Act 1036 of 2020, has for the first time provided an interface between land registration and planning. In the past, register your land, we plan our development. Now, the land registrar has an obligation to ensure that before the land is registered, there should be consistency with planning as approved by the planning authority.
Now that you're already talking about this law, give us your brief overview of the law. And viewers and listeners, we will get into the soft issues very soon. They'll give us this broader outlook of what exactly we have in there, what to look at, and what should empower you to know your rights moving forward. But later, we will get down into the detail so that directly you benefit specifically. Okay.
Samson, this piece of legislation, the Land Act 2020 Act 1036, for me is a very important event that has happened. And this event is a very long journey that started in 2003. And for most of the people who have been around the LAP, on the 23rd of July, when Parliament passed this bill into law, it was a day of excitement. The reason I am saying this is that the bill, which has now become law, assented to by the President, has introduced at least 30 reforms into the land sector. At least 30 things have changed from this bill. And if I give you an overview, the first thing that has changed is that for the first time, we have clarity on the structure of interest in land recognized in this country. So if you take the law, Section 1 sets out clearly what the interests in land, and when I say interest in land, I mean the legal relationship you have with the land. Because something we discourage the use of the word landowner.
That's right.
Because of the possibilities of confusion. Because land lends itself to multiple ownership at the same time. So if there's somebody could have the allodial title and create a freehold out of it, and a lesser a subordinate interest like a leasehold, a sublease, a license, you can create different strata of interest out of the same parcel of land. So we normally would say interest in land, meaning if in respect of a particular parcel of land, What is your relationship? What can you do with the land? Are you a freeholder? Are you a leaseholder? Are you the holder of the allodial title? And what are the bundle of rights that you can accept in relation to a parcel of land? So for the first time, we have legislation which has set out clearly that in this country, the recognized interests are, and they are listed. So if you go to section 1, it starts from the allodial title and talks about customary law freehold, common law freehold, usufruct, leasehold, and customary tenancies. What else we have done with this law is to now clearly set out the distinction between the freehold, either common law freehold or customary law freehold, and the usufruct. Because in the previous legislations we had, the word common law freehold, the term common law freehold, customary law freehold, freehold were used interchangeably and created some confusion. Now, we say clearly in this law that either you have the allodial title or you have a common law freehold, you have a customary law freehold, you have a usufruct, you have a lease, or you have a customary tenancy. So the interests in land are now clear. We also...
I know there's a difficulty in translating the various terminologies because you can't discuss land without using these terminologies, allodial, freehold, usufruct, and the rest of them. But can you spend a minute and try and help those of us who don't know what this means?
So the highest interest that you can have in land in this country is the allodial interest. The allodial interest is coming from a German word allod, which means the totality, the all. So if you put the land interest in a structure like this, in a pyramidal structure, the allodial title sits at the apex of the pyramid. It means it is that interest in land which gives the most extensive incidence or rights to the holder.
And normally, those who will have the allodial title will be who?
Normally, the allodial title could be vested in a stew, or the allodial title could be vested in families. So in some parts of the country, so if you go to like some areas of Accra, Jamestown,
right,
there are cases, Jamestown stool and Sempe stool, which say that the allodial title could be vested in a head stool,
right,
or in a sub stool.
Right.
If you go to the Ashanti region, the case of Yabo and Ababio, the case involving the Kasi stool, which says that the allodial title was vested in the Kasi stool. Now, in some cases, the allodial title is vested in families. So if you go towards the Dangbe areas, Ningbo, Pram, and in fact, some of the Akwapim areas, the allodial title is vested in families.
Right.
And there are cases like Amiroda and Podia on the Ningbo side.
So
now, if you go up north, for example, there are cases where the allodial title is vested in stools, like in Azantilo and Nairi. And then where the allodial title is vested in Tindanes, like in the Boliga areas and so on. And in some cases, the allodial title is vested in clans, like in the Adan areas.
Right.
Or it is even possible, there's a case called Nyasamri and Efibi-Esan, which says it is possible for the allodial title to be vested in an individual.
Okay.
So it's...
Yes, so now let's proceed to the common law freehold and the customary freehold after the allodial, which maybe the commonest way to not forget the allodial is that he says is the one that sits at the apex, and you can say is sort of the original owner, so to speak. Okay.
It's the title that could have been acquired through discovery and occupation of terra nullus, which is land which has not been occupied before, or it could be acquired through a secondary mode by way of a conquest.
Right.
So the conquered group, they will lose their land.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next one.
The customary law freehold is a freehold interest, which means that the interest you are talking about is of indefinite duration and it is potentially perpetual.
Okay.
So a freehold would run from a date and it will run indefinitely until some event which will truncate the freehold interest occurs. In the case law, it could be denying the title of the allodial holder, or dying without successors, or the state intervening through the exercise of the power of eminent domain, compulsory acquisition, or vesting, so to speak.
Okay.
But under the system that we have, the freehold interest, the customary law freehold, the common law freehold, the usufruct, it is not possible for me to sit here and say that they've been arranged in a hierarchical order.
Okay.
Because the customary law freehold, the common law freehold, and the usufruct should be at par.
So the one that I get up as an individual or a company, I'm going to the stool to take, and I'm asking them to give me this parcel of land. I pay money, they do an indenture for me, and I take, and I'm going to Lands Commission. That one is what?
Most of the time, it is a leasehold.
Leasehold.
Yes.
For a maximum.
For a definite duration, or a duration that is capable of being made definite.
Right.
And it is subject to certain terms and conditions. Now, the most interesting thing about the leasehold, and especially because it's been put in Section 1, the Supreme Court has said in this country, in the case of Nana Bedi Akwatre and Osei-Wusu, that leases are not indigenous to our customary law. So it means leases are a creation of colonization.
Common law.
From the common law. But now we have adopted the leasehold concept as one of the interests recognized in our system.
And that's where commonly you and I go to families or stools and we say we want land, and then they give to us and we pay money. And when they give that to us, they will normally in the indenture say for 99 years.
Exactly.
Perhaps. And then if you are a non-Ghanaian, then you can't take for more than 50 years, correct?
Small information.
Okay.
I think, there's a constitutional injunction against stools granting any interest in land of a freehold nature.
Okay.
So you see that in the law they provide that.
So this is the new regime.
The 19 years it has been in most of our constitutions.
Okay.
So the law provides that the acquisition of customary freehold interest by a non-citizen in respect of stool lands is prescribed. It's also customary freehold is also prescribed. The Constitution says now you can take an interest less than the freehold.
Okay.
So you can continue.
Right. So you were taking us through at least 30 reforms.
Yes.
And I just needed you to explain some of the terms you were using.
Okay. So now let me take you through the reforms.
All right.
The next innovation that this law has brought us, very interesting innovation, is found in Section 9.
Okay.
Section 9. Section 9.1 has extended the trusteeship concept in stool lands. You see, Article 267, Clause 1 of the Constitution says stool land shall be held by the appropriate stools as trustees for their subjects in accordance with customary law and usage, stool lands. Now, in Section 9.1, family and clan lands have also been brought under trusteeship. This is what drove this change. Some of us who were part of this regime change were of the strong opinion that intrinsically there were no differences between stool land, clan land, and family land. So if stool lands are held by occupants of stools and skins as trustees, then family lands and clan lands, which are also communal lands, should also be held by the heads of the families and the heads of the clans as trustees.
Okay.
Now, this is also consistent with Article 36, Clause 8 of the Constitution of 92, which says these holders, including holders or managers of public lands, are trustees. They are fiduciaries, and they should be held accountable as fiduciaries. So the idea of trusteeship has been extended from exclusively stool land managers to clan lands and family lands. And this has serious implications for those who are managing clan lands and family lands. They shouldn't continue thinking that this is our family land and the state is not interested. Okay. The state is interested in how clan lands and family lands are managed.
Okay. So there are consequences because of the concept of trusteeship.
Exactly.
So a family head, a clan head, or the chiefs, what are their responsibilities because of this, development? What can they not do?
They cannot randomly and wantonly dissipate the lands like they used to do in the past. If you are a head of family, you are the occupant of a stool, you are a chief, you are the head of a clan, you can't no longer go on business as usual, selling the land left, right, center, and pocketing the proceeds. No. In fact, for chiefs, it is even more dangerous for them now. Because you remember in the case of Hansen and Ankara, the Supreme Court said that you could not hold a chief to account, that they were not at all mentioned. Then there was another case of Jemfi and Owusu, who traveled all the way to the Supreme Court and ended up as Owusu and Ejei, in which the Supreme Court did not say clearly whether chiefs are accountable or not. They came closer to concluding that they are fully accountable. But who wants to talk the matter of chiefs? And then in 1985, PNDC Law 111 was passed. The head of family...
Let me just mention this to you because of what you just said. When we were working on the right to information law, they initially put in a provision so that chiefs can be held to account by way of requesting information on how they have dealt with your land. If they have given lands out, for example, made transactions as a subject, I should be able to question them to give me information on, say, how many lands they gave out this year and how much was accrued and how was the proceeds used. Well, the parliamentarians will tell you in private that if they had kept that in that law, today we still would not have had a right to information law. So they have removed it.
Fortunately for you, it is here.
Great.
It is here because under Section 13, from 13 all the way from 1 to 5 and 6,
right,
the law says we should apply PNDC Law 111, which is the Head of Family Accountability Act, to this law, this act, with such modifications as necessary. So now, the law which made head of families accountable is making chiefs, tindanes, and tindanes are specifically mentioned. Tindanes, clan heads, and family heads also accountable.
All right.
So what you said they will not achieve under the Right of Information Act, they can achieve here.
Great.
Now you can ask a chief to render an account of their stewardship when it comes to land sales.
All right. All right. Okay. Right.
So that's not the end. There is a major change in this law espoused in Section 11. Section 11.
I've got Section 11.
Prohibition of discriminatory practice.
That's great.
You see, this clause, which now is a section, has some serious consequence. You showed a clip about women's role and they are, in fact, in agricultural productivity,
Yeah.
women probably produce more food than men. But when we were going through the process of putting together the drafts of this bill, we went throughout this country on stakeholder consultations. He was part of it. We went to every district in this country with recording equipment to solicit the views of Ghanaians on what should be put in a new land act. And we found out that in some communities, a woman would not have to get land all by herself. He has to be accompanied by a man. Even if it is a 9-year-old boy, he's with a man before they will allocate. Or the land has to be allocated in the name of a man for the use of the woman. Now, with Section 11, acts which discriminate on the basis of place of origin, ethnic origin, and you see in the gender,
yes,
are all prohibited. So you no longer can tell a woman that if you don't come with a man, you cannot have land. It will be a practice contrary to Section 11, and you are in trouble.
The law says any such practice that does this on those grounds is void.
Yes.
What does that mean now? And there's a question that had come in yesterday, even before today. The questioner said that the court or law in Ghana recognizes traditional marriages according to the customs and traditions of the couple. And that, I presume, the court or law also recognizes the customs and traditions of the various ethnicities in Ghana. Now, my question is, if the traditional customs by which a particular marriage is recognized or instituted or conducted, for example, the Frafra traditional marriage, doesn't permit women to own property, how will this law affect married women from such traditions? So now we
the Frafra custom which prevents a woman from owning property would already have collapsed because of Chapter 4 of the Constitution on the laws of Ghana.
Okay.
It would have collapsed on the basis of the repugnancy clause.
Okay.
That such custom would be repugnant to good conscience, natural justice, and the democratic process.
So this fortifies it.
This in 11 is coming out of Article 17 of the Constitution on non-discrimination. You remember already Article 17 prohibits discrimination. So what Section 11 has done is to take the prohibition on discrimination as enshrined in the Constitution and put it in the Land Act and say that these practices will not be countenanced.
So when it says is void,
it means that the problem this questioner is raising will not arise. That Frafra custom itself is dead.
Okay.
Because of Section 11.
Great. Okay, thank you
So it means you can't now tell any woman, go and bring a 5-year-old with you, a man who is 5-year-old, a boy who is 5-year-old.
Okay.
That practice will go away.
I don't know what number you have gotten to as we try to address at least 30 reforms. Take one other issue and then I'll let your colleague also come in. You take a breather and then you come and continue.
Let me take one issue.
All right.
Which for me is too important. Maybe I'll forget.
Okay.
One of the biggest challenges in this country about our land sector is the state taking over large tracts of land and not being able to pay compensation.
Okay.
And not using the lands for the stated public purposes for which these lands were taken.
Right.
Because in the past, there has always been this argument that you can take the land before going to look for money to pay for compensation.
Right.
And in most cases, the compensation never came.
Right.
And nobody has been able to do anything about this matter.
Right.
Now, under this new regime, something very significant has happened for this country.
Great.
And what is it? This is in Section 238.
Right.
Section 238 is saying proof of availability of funds is a necessary condition precedent for an acquisition. if the cash is not proven to exist, no acquisition. It means going forward, the state would be reluctant or be discouraged from going to take lands which are not needed, or taking more than it needs, or going to take and creating compensation issues for subsequent governments. So at least for now, we all agree that if the state needs lands, the state would make provision for compensation
before.
And the law says cabinet must approve and make the money available. So if you go to the Lands Commission that you want 10,000 acres for some project, the Lands Commission will look for the availability of funds. And in fact, there is a requirement that the funds should go into an escrow.
Right.
So that by the time the acquisition process is done, the funds are released and everybody is happy.
Right. Right. I think in that area, the major concern of Ghanaians, and as I keep mentioning, particularly people in Accra, has been that the lands are taken, and we are all told that it is going to be used for the general good purpose. So we are going to build a hospital. No one is against building a hospital. We are going to do an airport. We are going to do X, Y, Z. And the people say, well, the state too acquires it compulsory, so they really don't have a say. So the state only pays their compensation. And then a few years down the line, before you realize, this same property is being, as it were, grabbed by people who are politically exposed, including politicians. And we know that there are problems in the Ga land where occasionally people rise up and people say that is a ticking bomb, that if we are not careful how we manage that situation, one day there will be some sort of uprising. What do you say about that?
This question,
because their lands are taken away from them and they have nothing.
It's true. If you look at the statistics, about 21, maybe between 19 and 21% of the lands in the Greater Accra region are government acquisitions. But it means that at least the owners have been able to deal with about 80% by themselves. Acquisitions are not in themselves bad, because every democratic or undemocratic government reserves the power of eminent domain, where the state cannot take land based on the market. The state should use that power as a last resort. So it's good for the country.
And the 19 to 21 that you talk about will be prime land.
Yes, prime land.
Yeah.
And the prime lands are the ones that are attractive.
Exactly.
So a state takes land for a particular stated public purpose or in the public interest. Where the purpose of the acquisition has failed, the Constitution in Articles 20, clauses 5 and 6 set out what should be done. What the state can do is to use the land for another public purpose, or the option of giving the land back to the pre-acquisition owners.
Right.
I think that's where we have issues.
Right.
So the state takes the land, compensation is either paid or unpaid, but the state also has the power to allocate the land for something else.
Right.
Where we are having issues is inclusion of the pre-acquisition owners. And this is the same thing that is happening in the areas we call vested. There was a Supreme Court case called Nino Teomabo and 3 others against the Attorney General and Lands Commission. The Supreme Court admonished the Lands Commission, because that day I was in the court, that the Lands Commission should include the owners of these lands before they were taken over by the state when it comes to decision making on those lands. And Samson, very interestingly, this new law has enacted that into law. There is a provision which says, going forward, I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
It's under vesting.
Right.
If you look at 2691, the Lands Commission shall constitute management committees for vested lands on which pre-vesting owners shall have adequate representation.
Okay.
So inclusion is one way of bringing harmony between the acquisition, the pre-acquisition owners, the pre-vesting owners, and the state sector. If you include them in the decision making on the lands, it minimizes the idea of organizing the choboi. And this is what the Supreme Court said, and I am happy to tell you and the country that this has been enacted into law.
Right.
That there will be inclusion.
Right. So let's conclude on that particular subject, because the new law's position now is that even where you acquired, supposing you have money, I don't know if that is what it means, and you went to the Lands Commission. First of all, if you cannot tell that there's availability of funds, Lands Commission should not allow you, the state, to take it. But where the state takes it, it says you cannot occupy the land for more than, is it 10 years? Without returning it.
You see?
Yes.
There are two different provisions.
Yes.
Yes. Please.
There's the first part of the law talks about compulsory acquisition of land.
Right.
And the latter part we are referring to is a temporary occupation of land.
Great.
That
Temporary
government uses its powers of eminent domain to acquire land temporarily, where there's an emergency.
Right.
And that one is not a compulsory acquisition of land, so compensation is not paid for the land.
Okay.
Government just pays for the use
the
of
interference.
Yes, a temporary use of the land.
Right.
And government is mandated by this law to occupy the land for a maximum of 5 years at a time.
Renewable by another 5 years.
So and thereafter, it has to decide whether it still needs the land, in which case it has to compulsory acquire the land or return the land.
Okay.
But for properly compulsory acquired land, that one is become state land forever.
Right.
And there's no issue of.
So when the government comes onto your land temporary to occupy,
yes,
the law gives it the power to do so.
Yes, I think it has to be under emergency situation. It was to justify it by.
For our purposes, it can do that for only 5 years,
yes,
and then it can be renewed for it for another 5 years, after which, if it is not ready to compulsory acquire the land and pay the compensation, it must let go and give it back to the owners.
Yes.
Right. So once you mentioned that subject, then I said we should complete and conclude on that subject, because it is talking about restoration of land. It's talking about divesting.
Yes.
Divesting of lands. And it's saying that there should be a committee to be set up, and then they should present a report to the president. By my calculation, that will be by June 23 or so. And then the president will now take steps to do an instrument, an executive instrument to release the land.
Samson.
What is that about?
Samson. The question of vesting is a very difficult matter in this country. These vestings happened in the 60s, predominantly in the 60s. And there are so many areas in this country that are vested. And they are in pockets. One of the most notable vested lands in Accra is what we call the Usumanche layout. The area around GIJ, the British High Commission, and so on. But you should note, for example, that the lands in Koforidua and its environment, they are all vested lands.
Okay.
In Koko.
In Koko, it's vested. And these lands were vested for reasons. Nkoko was vested because the people of Obomi and Atibie were in contest over who owns that area. So the state vested the land.
Vested means what?
The vested means and these vestings were done at that time under Section 7 of the Administration of Lands Act 1962. Most of the vestings. And what it means is the president is given power if he finds that it is in the public interest so to do, to vest any land, at that time particularly 2 lands, in himself, and had the power to make decisions in respect of those lands. And the statutory authority that is vested with power to make decisions on behalf of government is the Lands Commission.
Okay.
So these lands are vested. So Koforidua was vested because many years back the migrants from Old Jabin had come to find land from the colonial government and the Kukurantumi, their chimps, to settle refugees who were fleeing from Old Jabin. And subsequently that area became vested. If you go to Winneba roundabout, the lands within 1 mile radius of the Winneba roundabout are also vested, and including Winneba town lands are also vested. So there are pockets of vested lands across the country.
The vested lands in Tamale, right?
The Tamale vested lands have been divested.
Okay.
Yes. By operation of the Constitution. You remember in Article 257 of this Constitution, the Constitution says that the lands in the 3 northern regions, which previously were vested, are divested without further assurance.
Okay.
So the lands in the then 3 northern regions are no longer vested.
All right.
Now what it means is the pre-vesting owners took over immediately.
All right.
But you know the chaos that came out of it. Government land. So this is government land. There are open spaces around it. Government bungalow. The people started building. And the reason was they got their land back. So the question of vesting is a serious one. And there are some vesting in the old BA, Brown and Hafo region. Particularly because there were chieftaincy issues and overlordship and jurisdictional issues in between Asante, Brown, and Ahafo. So the lands in Mem, Chere, all those areas are vested. Now, what we didn't do was, when we vested these lands, the state should have addressed the underlying reasons which necessitated the use of vesting. We didn't. We have been sleeping from the 60s till now. And this provision that says within 6 months, for me, is an attempt to push the state within a relatively short period of time to take decisions. We can tell you that in this new law, if you go back to section 6, go back to vesting.
269.
269. Go to 268. If you go to 268, 1 and 2, you are told upon the coming into force of the 92 Constitution, it is unlawful to vest two land. This was the decision in the Osumanche layout case of the Supreme Court. But the law has extended the prohibition of vesting of two lands to family and clan lands as well. So technically, in this country, going forward, the state can no longer do vesting.
So if a land belongs to a clan or a family, the state cannot say
it has been vested. No. So now, no vesting of two land, no vesting of family land, no vesting at all. But the lands that are already vested are the ones we are talking about. That within 6 months, a system has to be put in place. And for me, that system would be going to understand the underlying reasons for the vesting and taking individual decisions on each vesting. The good thing is, Samson, many years back when we were in the Ministry of Lands, there was an inventory done of all the vested lands in this country. So the inventories are already done. And they are documented. The locations, the sizes, the reasons for the vesting are all known and properly set out. So it will not take more than 6 months, actually. But trust me, that 6 months started from 23rd December, when this law became effective. So we are already in 4 months.
So because, Mr. Poku, who you have been in charge of, public and vested lands previously, what do you know about this committee that the law mandates must do all this work and submit its report to the president within the 6 months, which will terminate in June, and then the president must begin to issue an executive instrument to give back the lands? How far have they worked if it's in place?
Something I think probably we have to read the law very well.
Okay.
The law talks about a management committee to assist in. There are two states now talks about management of the vested lands.
Yes.
So the management committee is to assist the lands commission in managing the lands.
Right.
Because the lands commission, the government holds the legal title to the land, but the beneficiary interest in the land belongs to the people. So in managing my land for me as a trustee, I have to be part of the management committee. So the management committee is to assist in the management of the land and probably make sure maximum revenue is obtained from the land.
Okay.
But for the recommendation to be made to the president for divesting is the lands commission, not the management committee.
Okay.
Because you look at 270.
Okay.
The president shall, on the recommendation of the lands commission, authorize the divesting of any land which prior to the coming to was vested in the president. So it's the lands commission which was required. Within says, okay, let's 272.
Yes.
Within 6 months of coming to force this act, the lands commission shall begin the process of evaluating all existing vested land with a view to recommending to the president the divesting of the land. So the lands commission,
and then the divesting of the land shall be by executive instrument published.
If the president I accept the report of the lands commission. So the lands, unfortunately, as my colleague said, they have done some work previously.
Okay.
So I think the commission is in the process of putting in place a report. Probably they will get it ready and submit it to the president to decide on each case by case.
All right.
But I have to add that when we are talking about vested land, people are thinking about the vast stretch of land, Compulsory and Koko and those places. But when the Administration of Lands Act was passed, it was used also to acquire small pockets of land, even for schools, for hospitals, which are still in use.
Okay.
So I don't think these lands ought to qualify for divesting, because it means that the school or the hospital land.
So this is what I'll do. I'll take a quick break, and when I return, now I'm going to focus on you. Kwame Jan spoke about at least 30 reforms, and he spoke about a number of them, and you also assisted in explaining some of them. We'll return and then keep the focus on you to also give us your overview of some of the areas. Then we'll go to some of the specifics, and I have messages coming from many people who are asking very important questions, including why the law seems to punish the wrongdoers, those who are taking land violently and all of that, and yet the police has set up a property fraud unit, but they don't end up taking anybody to court, and they say you go and fight on your own, and people end up dying because people are stealing their lands, and there's a lot of fraud in the system. How will the implementation or enforcement of the law be? Because as people are saying, we're a country of very beautiful laws. The major issue is enforcement. This show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Duraplast, where Duraplast goes, water flows. Having mosquito spray and coil, pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects. And Enapa Foods, it is tasty. DBS Industries, Robert and Sons Limited, optical services, your comprehensive eye care services provider. And I have many of you who are so excited and saying you are really enjoying the show, and we thank you for that. AB Jojo Afum says Mr. Jan has still not explained how customary freehold is different from common law freehold as stipulated by the New Lands Act. We'll return to that. We don't want to appear to bore you too much with the legalese. We know that we are dealing with land matters and it is law. All right, so we'll be right back. Too many of you are looking at the books on the desk and asking where to get them. We'll be right back.